Greetings. How are you? This is Dr. Daphne Davis, Mama Noni at St. C Academy, and I am the owner and current operator, legacy owner of St. C Academy here in Durham, North Carolina. And my parents, the late William Edward Davis and Celia Davis, are the reason we are here for the past 28 years. And so today, last week I spoke about or introduced some of these ancient empires of Africa. One of the reasons I'm on this quest, going down this rabbit hole, is because I think it's important for us to see not only um, Egypt as the framework for what happened in Africa. That being the oldest civilization in Africa, and where we know that the more we find out through archaeological evidence, things are beginning to, um, because of climate change, we have or changing climate, however you want to put that. You were now seeing some of these sites are reappearing or reemerging, and so archaeologists, and particularly our archaeologists of African descent, have now been able to go in and look at these sites and make some evaluations on what these sites were like, what are their connections or predate um, some of the empires, the more recent empires, are these uh, cities that were built upon cities or that are extension of other city states that were there. And also to just inform Africans. I mean, almost, it's amazing. Every time you um, begin a search on African centered or African communities, you always have to fight against these notions, these supremely stupid notions. Let me put it like that. That only Europeans or any civilization or anything that happened around the world began with white people, unless it was China or unless it's with India. But surely, African people could not have begun anything without some kind of interference with that or influence from outside of Africa. And so we have to dispel those notions. We have to decolonize our mind. And so I'm going to start with Dar Tichet, which I talked about last week. I've done my research. I have several. I'm gonna start, typing up stuff and making sure I have it listed on the site. But I mean, as we go through, the more I get, the better I get with this technology, the better I'll be able to uh, present that information. But one of the main articles, I think I talked to you last week about. Let's see, who was it? That a young white guy had done some information, and his was on a website, and his was really good. It was anti-racist. It was really pretty well put together. I think it was an archaeologist's history of early complex societies in West Africa. And then I found this article, Coping with Uncertainty, Neolithic Life in the Dar Tichet, Walata, Mauritania, 4,000 to 2,300 BP. So, and then I found a couple of other places. And just to make sure that there was a what are the commonalities in the research, or where do they solidly agree, and also the divergence, what are some of the disagreements. But at any rate, the first thing that I want to say is just do a quick review with the information I do have. So we know that Dar Tichet was between 4,000 BCE and lasted all the way up to present day. No, not present day. The Ghanaian Empire, which was started by the Soninke people. It is believed that the Soninke people were also part of Dar Tichet. However, there is, I think most of us know that uh, the oldest human fossils are from, or human, pre-human fossils or whatever, which date like back 3.2 million years ago or so ever. Are most of these these fossils have been found in Ethiopia. So we know that folks, the first folks were in Africa. The first folks were also mostly, the oldest ones have been found in East Africa. And Dinknesh is one of the first ones. I think she dates 3.2 million years ago. And she was a human, an ancestor to humans. So she wasn't a human, a ancestor to humans. All right. So we want to clarify that. So um let's see. So people migrated out of East Africa north to Egypt, south down all the way from Ethiopia down to um, um, South Africa, Zimbabwe, Tanzania, all of those places there, Madagascar, which is the island, and then um, trying to think what else is down there. Zambia, Zimbabwe, South Africa, Lesotho, not Swaziland, Eswatini, all of those places are in the south. Uh, Democratic Republic of Congo, all of those places. But then when it moved west, then that would be across the Niger. And we also know, because the Niger River, the Nile River, I think oh my goodness, it doesn't begin in Ethiopia. It begins, I think, it goes across several countries. I think it's in Tanzania. Flows, and then it separates into the blue and go and at blue now and the white now, and it travels all the way through Sudan. It goes through Somalia, Sudan, all the way Ethiopia, all the way to Ethiopia, and then empties and goes to Egypt and empties out into the Nile Delta there. But we know that there are several branches of of the Nile, and the Blue Nile and the White Nile, and those branches also, at maybe, they believe that there was a point when before the expansion of the desert, the desertification of that area, that there, then the Niger River, there were all of these river connections for transporting goods. So there was a transcontinental trade that was happening there. So we can assume that people, as they were traveling across from East Africa, they discovered the Niger River, which at that time was significantly larger. It was all above ground. It had several lakes. And so people were establishing communities along the lakes. So um, so they existed trade. So we know that these first people were hunter gatherers, and hunter gatherers are people who are like foragers. So they did not grow food. This was before agriculture, before people were creating permanent settlements. They were more nomadic. So they were traveling from place to place to place to place in search of food, which is probably, like I said, why they ended up in this area. Um, Now, there's speculation that Soninke people were already there. So there was some kind of bridging of communities. I don't know whether it was 4,000. There, because we don't know. We just don't know who was in that area before the the arrival of hunter gatherers. But there probably was some kind of merging of these the hunter gatherers and the Soninke people, or who are descendant of Mande people, but they were black people in that area. All right. Now, it is probable that hunter gatherers arrived. Okay, migrated in there. And what was interesting, though, which is also which is something that seems to be something interesting about Africa, in general, is that I don't know how, there is evidence that Africa did not have a Bronze Age. Okay. So I wanted to bring that up. We skipped the Bronze Age and went straight into the Iron Age. What's also interesting about Dar Tichet is that that same kind of thing happened with agriculture and uh, pastoralism. So pastoralism is when people take their herds, they gather their herds, and now you're controlling your goats, your sheep, and your cattle. And that generally happens first, and then you go into agricultural space. What's interesting about Dark Digit is that those things happen simultaneously. So it looked like that what they've discovered is that at the same time they were domesticating their animals, they were also discovered ways to grow millet. So they have a pastoral kind of combination, which is interesting that Africa did that. There were things that we skipped. So it wasn't this step development, or civilization, or cultural development. We Some of those things we were able to do at the same time. Um, what's also interesting is that, okay, I wanted to show. Oh, let me show you a picture of that they found of rock art in the 4000 BC. So this is um, a picture that they found on, I can't remember the location, but it was. Oh, let me see, I can find it on my phone here. Um, but it is one of the early folk art, and as you can see, that people are with their. This is the sign of them domesticating. This is pastoralism. They look like they're riding horses, but they're also so they've domesticated some of these animals. Okay, and this is Dar Tichet, one of the areas that shows you the early pastoralism. I mean, the early settling in that area. Um, the other thing was that their social structure. And so I've been to Africa, Sierra Leone, and one of the things you did notice is that you had, uh, well, after the war, I think they changed it someplace. Somehow they did. They revamped it, but in some of the older traditional spaces, you'll have a house, and you'll have houses all around in a circle, and in the center will be like a meeting place where people talk and discuss things. So in the oldest village that I went to, um, that was what you had. You had houses all around, facing inward like a cul-de-sac. So that's an African way of doing things. Well, they also found something similar to that in the way that this place was designed. So this is, let's see, do I have it upside down? Lord have mercy. So this is a picture of what they think based on the excavation of that site. This is Dar Tichet. This is what it would have looked like. And so you can see the center of powers here, and then you have community designed around it. And so I thought that was really interesting. And so this one I think would date like 1900 BCE, which and there is evidence that there was trade from Dartichet, because they had the rock salt, and they also had gold reserves. So there was trade between um, Egypt, probably also. I mean, we could probably go and see if there was trade between them and Kush. And then, because like I said, they had these tributary systems, these river systems that would have made that possible. Um, so there was, you had some, you had compounds the social organization, as you can see, you have the centralized government. And so let's think about the cities that we live in. You have the centralized government here, and then you have people who, like, this would probably be considered the urban area. All of this area right here would be the urban, and this would be the districts, the various districts. And they said that there were four district levels, and that there were about 500. At some point, there were like 500 different communities, um, that were all part of Dar Tichet. So they would have centralized government in district centers, and then on the outskirts, they would have villages. And so the villages are like our neighborhoods, you know. You got Forest View Heights, you've got the Forest Hills, you've got North Durham, you've got all of these different communities. And so that was the same thing you got going here. You've got neighborhoods, but they were calling them villages. Now you also had they have funerary mounds, so people had areas where they had like cemeteries, and they were well taken care of, and that was also a symbol of, you know, civilization, a civilized way um, of caring for your young. And I do believe that they've also found um, they found a 9,000-year-old. I'm gonna have to find that out, figure out where that was. Um, but I heard someone speaking about that also, where they found a boy who was buried with like a pillow, and that was they dated that back to 9,000 years ago. But this is when the Sahara was green, and it wasn't a desert, and all that whole area was had rivers, and it did not become arid until about 1,000, maybe 1,200 years ago is when it became the ability to be, it wasn't as habitable. Okay, so that's the word. But anyway, so they had villages, and then they had hamlets. And hamlets I would consider to be like people who live in the suburbs, or who live in like the counties. They live on the outskirts of the area. And they said that they did have these walled areas around the city, but they don't. And you see the distinctions of walled areas here. But they said they don't believe that that was because they felt like they were in danger. They believed that these were ways to separate different divisions within the community. So they had centralized government with leaders, and then compounds. And I think I addressed this last time. They had compounds with different classes of workers. So you may have had um, ironsmiths in one area. You would have and just like, you know, you come here, you find there's certain areas where you have all the car dealerships. You'll go to places where you have have people with other skill sets, like school teachers or whatever. Okay, you know, school districts. So here they had classes of workers. And so in the compound, you would have had one section of the compound would have been just what classified one group of people, and then you had another area, and another group of people would live there, and all of them lived where according to what their skill sets were. So you could probably have uh farmers on one side, people who collected wool from animals or whatever, the sheep, somebody who did dairy or whatever, you know, something else, people who were tailors, people who were, you know, what is it, leather. I can't remember what they taxidermy, tax or whatever. And then, you know, like I said, just whatever the community needed. Now, within those communities, they believe they had hierarchies. So I remember when I was in Sierra Leone, you found there was a group of people who did smithing, and you had an elder there, you had his apprentices there, and then you had children who were there, and they were probably there with their father or their parents or whatever. And so, but you had a whole group of people, but there was one person who was in charge. So I saw that, and we probably see some of that wherever you go. But those hierarchies were based on skill set and people who were leading of the in that area, instead of this very rigid uh like kings and stuff like that. They It seemed like it was more a hetero hierarchy, like you had multiple people who formed that hierarchy versus one person. And so we see that when you read like Chinua Achebe, a council of elders. So you had people who came together, who were the leaders of their communities, who would come together. So maybe it's like a city council board or whatever. uh that kind of a notion of a hierarchy. You got the mayor, but the mayor has to work with the council. And so um that's what they believe. And if you go and they also said, if you looked at that, this was another author who said that you could see some of that same governing structure that was created in Dar-Tichet also was found in Ghana and became the frame, the governing structure for the Ghanaian Empire, which you have to remember was in Mauritania, south of Mauritania, and in Mali area, not the Ghana that's on the coastline that we see now. That when they became, when that area took its independence, gained its independence, they took the name Ghana uh, um, to represent that new area that was formed in 1950. So that was Kwame Nkrumah. Those people, they said, let's name it Ghana. But the Ghanaian Empire is more like Mali, where Mali is, Mauritania and Mali. Um, this what else did we have here? Okay, no, not necessarily for equations, but for spatial special division. Now, like I said, they were also part of the salt and gold trade. So um the transcontinental. So the importance of this is, once again, we have to know, we're when we are learning, we're learning about the Roman Empire, we learn about the Greek Empire, and we learn about Mesopotamia, and we learn about the Indus civilizations and ancient Chinese civilizations. Well, and then we compare with Egypt, and most of the time we don't go past those empires. And then you have Kush, what comes up later, and you have um let's see, not Ethiopia, but Aksum, which is another empire that comes up later. But these empires are usually, a lot of them are AD. So we don't have, outside of ancient Egypt, we don't have a lot of empires that predate that. So what I want to do is, let's look at what was going on in ancient times, so we will have our own conversation. This is not to engage other people. We don't need to engage other people and to affirm ourselves. This is just our need to know for ourselves about our own empires. So next week I want to talk about Geno, which predated Timbuktu. So we got um, Dar Tichet, which predates the Ghana Empire, and which did not even. Oh my goodness! I think Ghanaian Empire was 800 BC to like 1000 AD. I'm not sure, but I know that the Malian Empire was beginning to rise, and it had kind of established itself by 1100. And so then you have Sunjata, who took over in 1200. So Ghana predates Mali. And then Mali, of course, predates Songhai. But we want to stay. Let's see what was going on BC. Let's find out what was going on at that time, and then and just broaden our own language around these things. Be able to share with our children so that um, they understand that yeah, we live in America, but before America, there were these empires that we are just now being introduced into the curriculum. um just now they finally decided, like within the last few years, to say Ghana. They still haven't talked about Abubakari. They probably won't. We're still dealing with Christopher Columbus, but nothing about Abubakari II. Even though we got Ivan Van Sertima and Lerone Bennett who wrote their stuff, we have and like I said, we're still stuck on ancient Egypt, and which is constantly debated about the or original people there. And we know, like when you look at a child that has their hair locked, and you see how that natural curvature of the locks looks, and then you go and look at the people, they're like Nubians and Egyptians with that same hairstyle under. I'm like, okay, whatever. Cleopatra was white. You know what? Whatever. Y'all want to fight? Go ahead and fight. Now, I'm not saying let's surrender Kemet, because Kemet says means land of the black people. They've got hieroglyphics that say that are can be interpreted and translated land of the black people, and we can go and see, so that you can fight but we can see. But let's also take a deep dive into other places. Let's go see what was going on in Jen. And so Jen, like I said, is also Mali area, and this is predating Timbuktu, and we will talk about, show pictures of that, have a conversation about what their governing style was, because we believe that it is going to be similar to what we have here. It also speaks to the governing structures of Africa, because as you we read, I did in the previous lesson about the Hunter's Oath and the Magna, the Kuraka Fuga, which was our charter that was written back 1200 um, AD, and the Hunter's Oath, which I'm not sure, that may have been about 1700, maybe 1800 AD. So these are like about less than 1,000 years old. But we need to know, okay, this was our governing structure. To me, the articulate with this, um, their social structure seemed to be represent that idea, that same idea, where you paid tribute to one central government, but you had uh, communities that ran themselves, and so it was a, and so we continue to see that same kind of through line across African worldview. That's an African worldview, not a necessarily a European worldview. African value system versus a European value system. And as this place falls apart, you better know your stuff because you may have to use that knowledge to reframe what is going to come next. We may we need to be a part of that. We can't just let it collapse around us. We got to be part of what building the future. So give thanks. I appreciate it. Appreciate you all, whoever is listening, and hope you're learning with me on this journey. Ashe. Okay.
I'm a St. Cia student. Of course I walk into the sound of drums.
I'm a St. Cia student. Of course I know my mother.
I'm a St. Cia student. Of course I can play the drum.
I'm a St. Cia student. Of course I can work with my hands.
I'm a St. Cia student.
You know how people love to enjoy food and don't understand how to flavor their food or how to replicate a meal? They're interested in supplements but don't know where to begin? Well, what I do is I take the guesswork out of enjoying flavor and wellness with my flavorful spice blends so that they can create delicious meals with healing benefits. Can Do Spice was created to help cooks at any level enjoy healing through food. Every spice blend was designed to give added health benefits of natural herbs. Every blend is complete. There's no need to add any additional spice for a delicious meal. Saving you time and money while adding supplements to your meals can be both tasty and fun. My earliest memories in the kitchen began with my father, Kenny Can Do Bond, so it was fitting that I would name this line after him. I have always looked to natural remedies to supplement the body, and I found myself hiding herbs and minerals in foods for my family. That's when it hit me. Everyone needs Can Do Spice. Everyone should be having this. It's an exclusive brand for cooks at any level who want to create flavorful dishes with healing benefits that can satisfy the body and soul. Add a little spice to your life. Give Can Do Spice a try.